So, just a little bit of background. 2020 obviously has been a year of trials, tribulations, triumphs, opportunities, dangers, stress, loss in a lot of cases. And so, over the last few weeks in particular, in terms of being vulnerable, I have had a really difficult time, particularly over the last couple of weeks. And there's various reasons for that. But on the professional side, obviously, I've been really hamstrung with regard to being able to get my message out for myriad reasons. But so it's been tough on the professional side, and on the personal side, for those of you that know the trials and tribulations of aging parents, and my mom has dementia, and one thing that's been surprising to me is, and my brother, is how quickly it happens. She's deteriorating, and then it just absolutely plummets. And having your mother essentially die before your eyes, that her eyes become more gray and lose the fire, and she's able to remember everything, or a lot of things. She acknowledges you, so it's not in terms of she can't remember, but she's definitely deteriorating to the point where we're starting to make moves to move her into a home, and all of those other things. And so then you combine that with the fact that my dad, and I feel for him, because there's a lot going on with COVID. There's a lot going on with my mom, and I love him to death. But the reality is he's not a really good caregiver, because in that generation, so he's 79, he's 79, my mom is 76. It just wasn't that way. And maybe that's an overgeneralization, but I can say, at least with my dad, he was never a nurturing type necessarily. He wasn't a caregiving type. He was a provider, very much stuck in that paradigm. And so for him, this is a tough role to fill for him, because it's not something that he's familiar with. And then you combine that with some cognitive decline on his side. My brother and I have been being very diligent and putting in a lot of time and energy with regard to dealing with the aging parent situation. And the analogy that I often use with my brother and others is life, as it turns out, is basically like a bell curve. So you come in at a certain level of competency, which is zero. You need people to feed you, change your diaper, provide for you. You cry, somebody comes and helps you, whatever that looks like. And then as you progress through life, you start to increase your capability, and then you peak. And then somewhere along the line, and I'm talking mostly, well, cognitively and physically, you go through a decline, and you start to actually get younger in terms of your ability to take care of yourself. So then it reaches the point where now, towards the end of your life, what I've noticed is that you are essentially an older version on the way out. But from a capabilities perspective, the ability to take care of yourself and communicate and express emotion and all those things, you're no different than you were when you just came into the world. And so it's been very interesting from that perspective. So if anyone has aging parents, you can start to see, you can recognize what I'm going through, or what we're going through now. And I don't say that to gain sympathy by any stretch of the imagination. It's to provide some context. And then you have layered onto that some personal challenges and some loss. For instance, that's been particularly tough to go through. And it's been a shitty few weeks, and last couple in particular. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because essentially on a personal side, I, like so many other people in this world of ours, are going through crisis. And crisis is defined by any time there's a time of uncertainty where the outcome isn't obvious, or it's not, maybe it's in doubt or something like that. And what's interesting is the characteristics of crisis, whether it be personal, professional, emergency management related, which I'll talk about here shortly, they're all the same. They're all the same. And so that really got me to thinking. I've always tried to be self-reflective as much as I can, and just really asking some questions around why. And as human beings, we have this amazing ability, to have, it's called metacognition, which is a fancy word for saying that we can think about what we think. We can think about how we feel. And it's unique. Metacognition is unique to us wonderful humans, because no other animal has that ability. A deer is scared and it doesn't think to itself, geez, I wonder why I'm scared, or bear, or anything like that. The animal kingdom is very literal. If it sees danger, it reacts. But as human beings, we have an incredible ability to think about how we think. And we also have the ability to control our thoughts. And that's what I'm going to be talking about a little bit later. So from a self-reflection perspective, I've always been very diligent with that. And there comes a cost to that, which I'm going to talk about. So essentially, taking the personal crisis that a lot of us have been through in 2020, on the personal side, again, loss of jobs, working from home, kids at home, not at home. Do we wear a mask? Do we not wear a mask? Is this a big conspiracy? Pump the brakes. Do not talk about any of that stuff, please. But it's been tough. It's been tough for a lot of us. I shouldn't say everybody. So then upon the reflection, I'm like, well, you know what? Considering I've got like 30 plus years of hundreds of search and rescue missions, Canada's two largest disasters, Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Rita, a whole bunch of other things. On the professional side, I was project manager for a decade with a large telecommunications company, and worked through a strike. I wasn't on strike, I was in management, but dealing with all of that crisis and dealing with all sorts of things on the professional side. And so then that gives me the kind of lenses by which to look at myself and my own behavior and my own thoughts. And so I think to myself, so when we respond, or when I respond to, say, a 2-year-old kid in Smith, Alberta, northern part of my province, I remember it just like it was yesterday. We get the call. It's 10 p.m. at night, and it was from the RCMP up north, and they said that there was a 2-year-old that had gone missing from his acreage. And in typical fashion, we get the call at 10 o'clock because the friends and family go out and they search extensively. And then once it starts getting dark, then they call search and rescue in this particular instance. So I remember we got the call at I think it was 10 o'clock. And of course, we mobilized. I was the president of the group at the time, and what's called one of the search managers. So we organize the search and tell people what to do and come up with the strategies and lost person behavior. So what are kids that age going to typically do? This kid wasn't dressed for the weather. And so we head up to Smith, Alberta. And I remember I was the first one there from search and rescue. And I had to park at the end of this long driveway. And it was pitch black. It's pitch black. And as I'm walking, and I'm just by myself, I'm the first SAR guy there, first search and rescue guy there. On either side, there are friends and family and vehicles lining this driveway. And some had flashlights, some didn't. But as I'm walking, and just the sound, if you can just picture it, the sound of my boots on the gravel, that was the only sound there was. And that was one of the first times I actually recognized, looking back at it, I didn't recognize it at the time for what it was, but just this incredible crushing energy of anxiety. And I think about that now as walking the gauntlet. And so as I'm walking, it was palpable. So I get to the end of the driveway, this long driveway, in the RCMP, there's a constable there. He's in his vehicle, and the grandmother, who was the last to see, and then the parents. of this kid. So I walk up, the RCMP member gets out of the vehicle, and the friends and family have been told not to go out and search because we were going out and we didn't want contamination and people making footprints and attracting the canine units that were out and so on and so forth. So they'd all been told to stand down and wait for us from the city, essentially. So when we got to the end, the RCMP officer said, "Oh, great, the expert's here." And instead of being stressed out or having feelings of stress or anxiety or anything like that, I thought to myself, yes, we are here and we are the best chance that 2-year-old kid has of being found alive. That's what I thought. You fast forward that to whether it be big wildfire in northern Alberta and going into a situation that is as chaotic as you can imagine. 88,000 people missing or evacuated. Fire raging just outside the city. It had already impacted the city itself. And you go in and you're trying to bring order to chaos. And flying in, it's not a feeling of stress. And I think I can speak for a lot of my colleagues. I don't get stressed when you would think, are you kidding me? That would be so stressful, but I don't. I really don't. And in fact, in an odd way, I revel in the opportunity to make a difference. And that's what I see. It's an opportunity for me to serve. And so what has really struck me is my professional emergency management world, where by all accounts, I should be extremely stressed out going into those situations. I'm not. I'm literally not. I don't feel levels of stress. But then flipping that around, and I reflect on the last few weeks on the personal side, I've been feeling a lot of stress. I've been feeling a lot of anxiety. Sleepless nights, having trouble sleeping, having trouble focusing, procrastinating like an MFer. Some days I just want to stay in bed. I just want to stay in bed. I don't want to face the world. And those complete polar opposites, where on one side, this incredible energy that comes from crisis, and then on the other side, on the personal side, the crisis that absolutely drains me. So I was thinking, what is the difference? What is the difference? Because ultimately it's me, right? I'm the same person going into emergency management and search and rescues as I am dealing with my personal stuff. So one of the analogies I think, or one of the things, and then I'll get to an analogy that I've arrived upon, is maybe this sense of personal crisis is you're clinging on to something. You're clinging on to something that probably no longer serves you. Maybe it's a memory of the past or memories of the past. Maybe it's a feeling that, man, the future that I thought was intact is no longer intact and it's not going to be realized. Maybe it's the sense of sometimes you actually like the drama, right? And I know a lot of people that are actually addicted to drama. And there's a whole bunch of issues there, but if there's been some trauma in their life, they actually expect that. And if there isn't trauma, they'll create it, and they'll create their drama. So I'm thinking in terms of that. What am I clinging to? What is it that maybe it's the past, maybe it's the sense of this unrealized future? And the analogy, and this is something I would really love for people to remember. And it's an odd analogy, but it's true and it's very indicative of our life. In working with a number of military personnel, special forces, and so on and so forth, and just knowing a lot about behavior in general, there's this story, or not even a story, it's case studies, for lack of a better word. And so in Africa, if somebody wants to catch a monkey or a gorilla or a baboon or something like that, and whether it be to be a pet or as part of the hunting situation, whatever that might be, it's such an incredibly simple thing that people do. And it is exactly a great parallel to us as human beings. So what they do is they make a small hole, and then they'll put something, a piece of food, into that hole or into a tree trunk or something like that. But the hole will be really small. And so the unsuspecting animal will walk by and it will smell, hey, it smells like food. And of course it will figure out, where is it in the tree? Or let's say it's in this hole. This is where it gets really interesting. The animal will have to put its hand, it will have to clench its hand tight, reach in and grab the piece of food, whatever that piece of food might be. Here's the catch. It cannot let its hand out of the hole. It cannot take the hand out of the hole because now it's holding on to the food. And so it will actually die there holding on to that piece of food because it is not wired. The animal is not wired to let go of that. It is just simply incapable of saying, I must drop this, let my hand out, and I will survive. And so I use that analogy or that metaphor a lot because is that what's causing you pain? Is that what's causing you to go through this crisis? Are you clinging to something that doesn't serve you? Are you clinging to that future that is no longer the case? And so really being mindful of that, of what are you feeling while you're going through this particular crisis? And a lot of times it's because you're holding on to something, or you're attached to it and you're not able to, just like the animal, unable to let it go. And you just simply aren't wired that way. So I've noticed that. I've been really reflecting on that, and I'd encourage you to use that analogy as well. And one thing I've also noticed is this culture of sometimes toxic positivity. And I am, by most accounts, a very positive person for the most part. That said, I've found myself over the last few weeks really railing against positivity and people using a lot of strong, amazing, and this is a great opportunity, and so on and so forth. And while I completely understand that, I found myself to be extremely sensitive to that. And I'm finding my self-talk saying, sure, easy for you to say, easy for you because whatever is there. So I've recognized that maybe I'm clinging on to some things. Maybe I'm being hypersensitive to any positivity. So I'm actually being anti-positive. I definitely recognize a lack of sense of control, which we call locus of control. One of the biggest stressors in our lives, and the reason why crisis is so stressful, is the lack of control or lack of locus of control. Because the human being, the human organism, the primitive brain, the reptilian part of our brain relies heavily on predictability. And the only way to be predictable is by having control, which frankly is an illusion, which we'll talk about. So maybe there's a sense of lack of control, whether it be COVID, whether it be finances, all of these things that are outside of my immediate control, which is very important because we'll talk about that. And the irony around some of this too is that one of the antidotes to alleviating your stress and coming out of crisis is actually connecting with people, relying on your relationships. But for me, and I don't know, and I'm just curious for some thoughts in that. For me, I shut down. I actually shut down. But what I love about my relationships that I've created in my life, and hopefully you have the same, is that even with a text, I get an answer or phone call back saying, hey, dude, you okay? You okay? And I love that. I'm so grateful for the circle that I have created of people that are very mindful of that. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm hiding it. And it's just a text. But even energetically, even the words you use can come across very obviously. And some days there's no impact, for sure. Each day, some days it's like 100%. I'm like, I'm fine. Other days, I just don't feel like being fine. And I do find that the nights are the hardest. And so that leads me to more conflict where I'm stuck between honoring my feelings and just feeling a certain way and just letting it be present. Sit with the anger, the frustration, the sadness, whatever that might be. Just be present with it, because if you fight it, it will only get worse. And in order to, it's law of opposites. I was going to use like a reciprocity, but that's not going to work. So the law of polarity, where in order to appreciate one thing, you have to know about the other. So in order to recognize and appreciate the top of the mountain, you have to realize what it's like to be in the valley at the bottom of that mountain. So through that contrast, that's where our emotions live. But if we're constantly just at an even keel, then we won't experience life like we're supposed to. So it's recognizing that you need to honor your feelings. You need to be present. And then, but at the same time, at what point do you get out of the woe is me and get up and get at her? At what point do you stop talking about it and thinking about it and ruminating about it to say, hey, okay, you've been there, done that. And I know, say like Tony Robbins has a 15-minute rule. The US Olympic program, some of the sports have a 24-hour rule, win or loss, win or lose. If you can celebrate for 24 hours, you can wallow for 24 hours. So I'm looking at maybe doing something like that, but it seems like trying to assign an arbitrary number can be a little bit, can be wrought with danger. So with all of that said, all of the things that I've been experiencing and self-reflecting upon, I can tell you that there are some things that I am doing and that I would encourage you to do as well. And one of the things is that I talk about a lot is halt. So do not make a big decision if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Okay? Do not make a big decision if possible if you are hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Halt. And that is more of a proactive method to say, okay, I know that I'm one of those things. Now is not a good time. And I find that as I've gone through some personal trials and tribulation, I'm more tired. I'm lonely. I'm maybe more angry. So I've been pumping the brakes, and that has helped me quite a bit. And but it's amazing to me to see how vulnerable you are when you're not feeling well. You're vulnerable to the just your emotions, essentially. So halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Realize that ultimately control is an illusion. There's nothing guaranteed in this life. And so that helps me when I start thinking about the coulda, woulda, shoulda. It would be nice if, or too bad that is no longer going to be the case, because ultimately nothing was guaranteed in the first place. And realizing that I am not my thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You are the thinker of your thoughts. I am the thinker of my thoughts. And through metacognition, we have the ability to control our thoughts. And so I am not depressed. I'm having depressed feelings. I'm not stressed out. I'm having feelings of stress. I'm not angry. I'm having feelings of anger. You get the idea. If you're using the I am the thinker of my thoughts, you absolutely do have the ability to switch your thoughts. And from once you switch your thoughts, that will impact your feelings, right? And then there's a self-coaching model I've talked about. Another thing that I've been really leaning into lately is practicing my 5-step defeat the beast process for defeating stress. So it involves 5 steps. One is just recognize that you're having feelings of stress. Take 2 deep breaths. Boom. A lot of times that will stop that runaway, what we call amygdala hijack. That will stop it in its tracks. But if it doesn't, then it's time to do something that we call box breathing. And I'm here to tell you, I've been practicing box breathing a lot. If I'm going into a conversation with my dad, or if I'm even just going to my parents, or I'm dealing with some other personal things, I box breathe. And what box breathing is, inhale through your nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out through your mouth for 4 seconds, and wait for 4 seconds. Inhale for 4 seconds through your nose, hold it for 4, Breathe out through your mouth for 4, hold it for 4, and do that. And I found just through my own experience, maybe 3 or 4 cycles of box breathing really helps bring my heart rate down. The other thing I've been focusing on is getting lots of sleep. And I've been now the 9 p.m. guy. Normally I'm a night owl, but I've made a concerted effort to get lots of sleep. There's a whole bunch of benefits for that. Now, again, caveat, not too much sleep, because then you're now lounging around all day and you're not being productive, which in turn causes some stress and things like that. 2 other things I've been doing. Moving my body. I've been absolutely psychotic with regard to moving my body, even just for a walk. Just a walk. I'm not talking about biking with my son, which we were doing, but now it's dark at friggin' 3 p.m. it feels. But even just going out for a walk, listening to a podcast, an audiobook, something like that. And so I just throw my noise canceling headphones on and I walk. And it could be a 20-minute walk, it can be a 30-minute walk, but whatever it is, it's out in the fresh air and I'm just moving my body. And last but not least, something that has been very helpful is journaling. Journaling, both what I call the 5-minute journal, also journaling my to-do items, so I get it out of my monkey mind onto paper. But the 5-minute journal, go ahead and Google it. I strongly recommend picking up a copy of the 5-minute journal, because it involves 3 things for gratitude: what you're going to do to make today great. There's some affirmations and also an opportunity to reflect on the day. So with the journaling and combining that with meditation, I've been really picking up on the meditation again over the last little while, which has really helped. So there's a whole bunch there in this particular conversation. I appreciate everybody